Good morning, you guys. This is Danny Batsalkin. This is Danny B Live, and I want to thank you for tuning in today. You guys, I'm so excited for the show today. We have Brian Vander Ark, lead singer of the Verve Pipe, on the show. We're going to talk about all kinds of cool stuff about music, rock and roll, the music business, Brian's story, his journey. This is definitely a show that you do not want to miss. And for those of you who are wondering, why do we have a rock star on a show that's about real estate, business, and finance? I'm going to tell you in just a second, but I promise you it will be worth your while. So let's go ahead and let's rock and roll. No pun intended. Let's do it, you guys. All right, here we go. Brian, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being on. Such an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thanks, Danny. Nice to be here.
Yeah, so I'm super excited. We already have a bunch of people on. We got Maxim saying he's ready for the interview, so I'm throwing the comments up. By the way, I should have told you, Brian, you won't see the comments, but I will, and the questions, but I'll definitely read them off to you. So you guys,
so they're going to be filtered through you. Is that what you're saying? You're going to tell me all the good ones and none of the negative ones? I appreciate that. I wish everyone would do that.
That's right. I'm going to censor the comments.
Thank you.
Like Facebook and Twitter.
Perfect.
So you guys, here we go. Brian, I'm so excited to have you on. And, you know, a lot of people, when I told them you were going to be on, the first question was, wait, what does that have to do with real estate, business, and finance? But, you know, we have entrepreneurs on this show, and wherever you're watching from, you know, listen, you're in the music business, and I understand you're an entrepreneur. You have a business you're running, and so I'm so excited to hear about your story, challenges you've been through, and all that kind of stuff. So I thought, let's just go ahead and kick it off. I'd love for everyone to hear your story and kind of how you got into what you're doing and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, well, I mean, my story is a story of reinvention. You know, I've had to reinvent myself a few times over the years. You know, I started when I was 16 years old at the Holiday Inn bars. I was a lounge singer. And, you know, when I was still in high school and people would say, play James Taylor, I'll give you $1. And I'd play James Taylor for $1, that kind of thing, you know. And then from there, I took a break and went into the Army and came out 4 years later and begged for my job back at the Holiday Inn so I didn't have to re-enlist. And then from there, I formed a band, and I got discovered by Willie Nelson. I got up on his bus and I gave Willie a song I had written for the American Farmer, and Willie was super gracious. He said he'd listen to the demo I gave him, and I left the bus with this new feeling of confidence and inspiration. A lot of those feelings might have had to do with something, the quality of air on Willie's bus. But other than that, I was feeling confident and played Farm Aid 4. He asked me if I'd play Farm Aid 4, and I did. And then got home and I formed the Verve Pipe. And we decided to borrow $5,000, and we went into the studio and we recorded an album, and we sold about 20,000 copies. And then we took some of that money and we made another album, and we sold about 30,000 copies. So the band had only been together for about a year, and already we were making upwards of $200,000, $300,000, and that got the attention of RCA Records, who signed us to a 4-album deal. 2 of the albums were firm. That means they have to record them and release them, and then the other 2 are their option. They could drop us if we weren't going in the right direction or if we weren't selling enough records. Now, my girlfriend at the time, for what could this is going to get a personal side here. My girlfriend at the time, for what could have been a number of very good reasons, kicked me out of my our apartment, and I moved into the band's storage unit, and I lived in the storage unit. I figured I'd show her $100 a month, you know, and I lived there and I wrote all of these songs for our debut RCA record, and I came out of this storage unit after a couple months and I had a dozen songs, and RCA flipped out. They're like, you got 3 or 4 singles here. And they sent us off to work with Jerry Harrison of the Talking Heads. And so we got to go out to San Francisco and make an album. And then we got to tour with Kiss, which was, you would think would be amazing, but it was awful, terrible experience. I learned 2 things from the Kiss tour. The first thing I learned is that you have to know your audience, right? Basically, we're nothing like the Kiss crowd, nothing like the Kiss audience. So imagine 20,000 Kiss fans can't wait to see Kiss in any given city. So they buy tickets, and this is when Kiss put makeup back on, and they were going back out on the road for the first time in years with the original members. And imagine all those people go to the arena and wait for 2 hours to see Kiss, and the lights go down, then the lights come up, and it's some stupid band you've never heard of that's opening up. That was a terrible reaction for us. But still, we did that for 30 dates, you know. And fortunately, we had that ace up our sleeve, which was a song called "The Freshmen." That's the one that put us over the top. So we had a lot of success there, and that was about 1997 that was released, and that did some great things for us.
Yeah, Brian, I mean, what a cool story. And we're going to get to kind of the, all the reinvention stuff and everything. Because I think, when I interview entrepreneurs and, I coach real estate agents and business people and stuff like that, I mean, the story is so similar. I mean, really, it's you're starting a business. In your case, it's a band. Your product is your music. But it's a very similar story. By the way, I was going to say, I remember the song by Toby Keith about smoking on Willie Nelson's bus.
And so
yeah. That's what you reminded me of when you said that.
My buddy told me, hey, here's the thing you should do. You should go ahead and get a little high before you get on the bus. And that was a mistake. I ended up staring at my shoe for the first 15 minutes of the conversation.
That's really funny. So, Brian, question for you on so by the way, like 97, this is really bringing me back. I was graduating from college. I remember the song very well. And so I when I was a kid, in the 80s, was a huge fan of still am, rock and roll, Motley Crue and all these bands that were playing back then. And I remember as a kid, I wanted to be a rock and roll star. And my family is very musical. My mom was a concert pianist, but it just never really ended up speaking to me. I went into sports instead. Anyway, my question for you is, how do you go about writing a song? This is something I've always wondered.
Yeah, well, I can tell you this. I mean, it starts as cliche as it could possibly be. A lot of times, for instance, the Freshmen started in the shower. It was one of those things where I'm just humming this melody, and I'm like, what is this melody? And I get out of the shower, and I'm still humming. I'm like, this is super catchy. I thought maybe it was a jingle or something, and then I was humming it all day, and I ended up calling friends the next day. I'm like, what is this? What is this song? And nobody knew what it was, and I figured, well, it's mine then, And I just needed a good story to go with it. So I took a year to work on this story. It took almost a year. And I'm just giving you the Freshman as an example of songwriting. Yeah. It took me a whole year, these puzzle pieces, trying to figure out what this song was and what these two guys were doing. And I had everything in the song except for two phrases. I didn't have the phrase, the Freshman. They weren't even freshmen in my song yet after a year of working on this song. And I didn't have the phrase, she was touching her face, which is one of the most asked questions I get. And I remember I'm sitting there. I worked at a sporting goods store at that point, and I was stringing tennis rackets during the day, and I was going to be late. But I'm sitting there, and MTV's on in the corner. I'm sitting on my couch with a guitar, and I'm playing around with this song. And I'm like, what is this song about? Who are these people? Why should they be forgiven? And all this stuff. And I look down on the coffee table, and there is a copy of the VHS movie I had rented the night before, and it starred Matthew Broderick and Marlon Brando, and it was called The Freshman.
Right.
And I was like, holy shit, that's it. These guys are freshmen. This is why they can do these things, and we all kind of understand. You do these things when you're first year in college, you go a little crazy, and then years later, you don't think about the ramifications of that. And it was the perfect title. And then I still needed that other line, that she was touching her face line. I was still missing that gap. And on MTV at the exact same time, with the volume down, was the video for the Divinals, I Touch Myself. And she was laying back, touching her face. And I was like, she's touching her face. There you go. Wrote it, finished it, and still made it on time for work.
Wow, that is
so essentially,
so cool.
That's what songwriting is. Songwriting is getting the melody first for me. Always the melody first, and then going through, listening to people, talking to people, getting people's stories, that's why I'm a people person. I love to talk to people, love to talk to fans, and get some sort of story idea, and then put that puzzle piece in this song and put this puzzle piece in this song and that kind of thing. So I'm always working on 3 or 4 songs at a time.
Very interesting. That's really cool. Well, that clears it up for me for sure. By the way, Riva says, so cool to have Brian on the show. So Riva, thanks for tuning in. And there's one of your fans.
Riva,
right there.
Thank you.
So Brian, it's always the melody first. So follow up to that for me would be, do you know, like when you have a song that you're done with, do you know that song is going to be a hit, or does that come as a surprise?
Here's the thing. I think most songwriters who write, who have hit songs or want to write hit songs, you think every single song's a hit. You're like,
Hmm.
this song is so catchy. And 99% of the time, I'm proof of that. 99% of the time, they're not hits. It's just something that's catchy in your head. And hopefully you find something that resonates with other people. The example, the Freshman was the melody was catchy enough that it was already in my head. I just needed the lyric to be catchy. And once I saw the Freshman video, I said, that's it. I knew that that was going to really sell it. The perfect combination of the lyric that works with the melody. And that's very, very rare. So like I said, you think all your songs are hits when you write them, but until people come up to you after a show and say, what was that song, the song about her touching her face, which happened to me a lot in the beginning. And then, 2 months later, everybody knows it before, we even got signed to a major label because people had heard it, on cassette tapes that were being passed around. Everybody in the audience is singing the song. And that's, when RCA came out to look at us, see what was going on with our band, they saw the entire, 500 seat place singing every word of the Freshman and taking over the lyric.
Right.
Then they knew it was a hit song, So.
That makes perfect sense. It's funny you say that. I think about that with my YouTube videos. We've gotten really into putting out YouTube content, and it's like every video I make, I go, "Oh, this is going to be amazing," and
yeah,
90%.
I'm going to have 100,000 views. It's just like you have the most brilliant tweet ever, and you're like, "Oh my God, there's going to be thousands of retweets on this," and you get like 4 likes and 1 retweet, and it's your mom.
Yep. But it's funny. Like the one video I have that's up to like 50,000 views, I didn't think much of it when we made it. I was like, whatever. And then like it's gone crazy. So I guess it's very, very similar. Now, one thing, Brian, I wanted to ask you about as well is I heard on a different interview you were giving that you don't or music is very mathematical, but you don't actually read music that way. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. I don't read music. I don't read music. I mean, I can pick out notes on a piano and that kind of thing. And I played trumpet when I was a kid, but I don't sit and read music I don't write music. This is mathematics. It's all math to me. And I can't handle that kind of math. There's no musical calculator, for me to figure out how to play something. So everything's in my head. It's always in my head. And then I usually have somebody, my keyboard player, transcribe it for the guys, the musicians who maybe we have a horn section or whatever. They'll take care of all that. But I've never found it necessary to figure it out. In fact, there are people that are music, we call them musoids, the guys that are really into the music and the notes and the whole thing. And we've had guys in my band like that. And then we've had guys in my band that are, they play by ear. And there's definitely some friction there always, because the guys that are musical, that know music, will say, you can't do that. It doesn't work musically. And I have to say, listen to it. It sounds good. That's the important thing, is that it sounds good. And you can never get that through to people who read music,
Right. Interesting. That's very cool. So, back in the day, you were touring and with Kiss and all this kind of stuff. I guess I got to ask, as a music fan, and I've seen some of the movies, but what was the craziest thing that happened to you guys on tour?
Oh, man. I mean, there's the sex, drugs, and rock and roll stories, which everybody loves. In the 90s, it was unfortunate that there was so much of that excess in the 80s bands with the hair bands,
right,
that in the 90s, mostly it was girls with, who wore patchouli and remember those, and wore flannel. And it was not that kind of vibe. It was always the very intellectual vibe. You would go out afterwards and you'd have these great philosophical conversations, when really you just wanted to make out with somebody or something, you know what I mean?
Right.
But the craziest stuff, I mean, for me, it was always the really fun stuff. Meeting Pete Townsend, having Pete Townsend come to a play I was in La Jolla, back in the year 2000. And then getting to meet him afterwards and sit with him because of who I was and what I did and my success, that never would have happened other than, that exact moment. And so those are the thrilling stories that I look at when I look back on things,
So you missed all the 80s fun, man.
I missed all the 80s fun. I was like 5 years too late.
Right.
I mean, once we got in there was, like I said, it was all about the lyric. Kurt Cobain, Nirvana really opened things up
Yeah.
for my band and everybody's band because they broke it wide open when music was really not that good in the early 90s, 91, what was it, CNC Music Factory and Vanilla Ice and all these other bands like 90s, And then when they broke it open, there was this whole poetic, like lyric movement where the meaning of the words meant something, even if they were ambiguous, even if they were overly poetic. If you look at any of the lyrics from that era, the 92 to 95, they're all poetry, and so people always wanted to discuss the lyric. You didn't want to discuss the lyric with the band Poison. You know what I mean? You pretty much know the lyric. You know what you're getting. Sebastian Bach, for instance, you're going to discuss lyrics with Sebastian Bach. And I know Sebastian Bach isn't in Poison. I'm just picking up other hair band guys that I know of. So it was a whole different vibe. So what you had back then was the excess of sex and drugs, good for them, and what you had for us was more conversation.
See, that's when I was a kid, man. That's why I wanted to be a rock star, because I saw Poison and Motley Crue and everything that was going on.
Sure, that's that real flashy rock stardom that every kid wants. We had some of that, but for the most part, our rock stardom was trying to figure out what the next song was going to be, what the next hit song was going to be. It was constantly working on music to try to make the band better, make the shows bigger, that kind of thing. It wasn't that just, kind of lay back and be on cruise control with a label that's pushing whatever you've got down people's throats. It was a little bit more difficult, I think, in our era than any other era.
Right. No, for
just
sure.
Because the songs were not written to be hit songs in my era. I mean, the songs really, any song could have been a hit if it was interesting enough in my era. That's for sure in the 90s.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So then, Brian, after kind of that whole time, I know, we started out the interview really by talking about your stories about reinvention, and I know you've been through so many different cycles here. So after that whole kind of cycle there, what happened after that? I'd love to hear how what happened next, I guess.
Well, when you have a number one hit song, what they say in the music business is you're only as popular as your next hit song. Right. And we didn't have another hit song on that record after Photograph and Freshmen came out. That was the big one. So we had to go back in the studio. Now, I wasn't going to go back in the storage space. That was my place where I did some really great writing. I mean, we sold 2 million, 3 million records, off the writing that I did in the storage unit. And I'm like, I'm a rock star. I'm not going to go live in some stupid storage unit. I'm hanging out with, Cameron Diaz and Lauren Holly. What am I going to be like, hey, girls, why don't you come over to my storage unit tonight? I got a case of Zima or whatever the 90s beverage was at the time. So I said, let us go to New York. We'll record our next album in New York City. We'll take in the vibe of the city and we'll make a great New York style album. And the problem with New York is that it's like a New York deli. It's like a menu in a New York deli. There's too many ways to get into trouble, too many choices, you know what I mean? And too many ways to spend money. So, for a 3-month recording process to record an album, it typically costs $200,000. New York was going to be $400,000.
Wow.
But we were there for 9 months. So our album cost $1.2 million to make, which is a ridiculous amount of money, way over excess. And then I figured we had 2 million people, 2 million people buy the record at that point. I said, well, we have 2 million fans. You know what I mean? At least 1.5 million fans of this album, the last album. So at least 10% of those people are going to go out in the first week and buy. So 150,000 in the first week was my goal. And first week sales came out, 150,000 people did not buy that $1.2 million album. About 7,000 people bought it. It was awful. I mean, it was a huge failure. And so we had to go back to the drawing board. And this time I said, screw it. I'm going to go live in the storage unit. I moved back into the storage unit, and got myself dirty and down, gross and disgusting and mattress on the floor kind of thing. And I wrote for this next album, and RCA flipped over the demos I had written, and they said, we're going to send you to Chicago this time where we can keep an eye on the budget. and we recorded in Chicago and we made an album. And the first single went to radio and it shot up the charts. Number 22 with a bullet, which means it'll probably get in the top 10. It was a song called Never Let You Down. And then I wrote a song for the movie called ROCKSTAR. You know this movie, Mark Wahlberg, Jennifer Aniston?
It's Mark Wahlberg. Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
So the end of the movie, Mark Wahlberg sings this song to Jennifer Aniston. He lip syncs to my voice. It's a song we did called Colorful that I wrote for the movie. And so we had, here's the deal. We had the perfect marketing storm. We had a song that was already on the radio. Then we had another song in a movie sung by one of the biggest box office stars at the time, on screen, starring Jennifer Aniston as well.
Yeah.
And so this movie was going to be huge, right? And so we're out on the road and we get our release date. And the release date is picked way in advance because they got to ship all the records to the stores and all this for this big release date. And you look at the date back then and you go, wow, it's great. It's in the fall. So, there's going to be kids going back to school talking about the new music. You got Christmas retail right around the corner. But you look at the date now and you go, wow, worst possible fall you could try to release anything commercially. Our album and the movie were released just a few short days after 9/11.
Wow.
So that was the big crash for us, Now, listen, I'm just speaking from a marketing standpoint. Many worse things happened to people on 9/11 than, some stupid rock and roll band's album not taking off. But from a marketing perspective, you couldn't promote anything. Mm-hmm. You couldn't go out at that time and say, hey, I know you're suffering, buy our album.
Sure.
It'll make you feel better. So nobody really wanted to go see a movie about a 80s rock band, a comedy during that week. Right. And so nobody saw ROCKSTAR in the theaters. And then, nobody bought our record. And so again, we had another failure on our hands. And RCA called me and said, that's the end of the era. I think we're going to go ahead and drop you. So I had to figure out at that point what to do. And what I did was I sold everything and I bought an RV. An old 1994 Ford Searcher RV, rust bucket, it had a camper over the top, of the cab where I drove. And I drove this thing around and I played as many shows as I could play. And I started writing songs. I realized that this was like a mobile storage unit for me because I was alone by myself all day. And I parked, to the side of the road and slept and I would write and the whole thing. And I wrote a dozen songs and I went back into the first studio the band ever recorded an album in for $5,000. And I made a solo album, and then I went out and sold the album. And on my own with no video support, no radio support, I sold about 10,000 copies. Now, 10,000 copies, when you don't have a record label taking 90% of the profit, that's $100,000. So I'm making money again, right? And I'm not broke anymore. And I'm like, all right, well, here's what I got to do. I got to get back on that treadmill, take some of that money, make another album, and keep this thing going. And I'm out on the road and I'm playing a show and then I'm selling some merchandise and I'm writing during the day and I drive to a new show and I'll sell some merchandise. And then I met a girl and I fell in love.
Uh-oh.
And we wanted what everybody wanted. We wanted to we wanted to raise a family and buy a house. So we bought a house in 2008.
Oh, good time.
Not a good time. Yeah, not a good time. So some of these mistakes were mine. And then I didn't know what I was going to do. Suddenly I couldn't afford not only to make an album, we couldn't afford to pay the mortgage. And this was the other reinvention. I got an email from a fan, right? And she said, hey, I wonder if you'd come play my birthday party. And I'm like, I'm kind of a rock star. I really don't play birthday parties,
That's right.
Typical, what do you think I am? And she wrote me back. She's like, I'll pay you $2,500. And I'm like, what time is this party? I'll be right over, And I went to her house and she had 50 folding chairs out in her living room for her family and friends. And she had, fresh flowers and vases and she had family photos on the walls, and she set up her whole living room like a concert venue. And I played for an hour. And when I got done playing for an hour, all the songs that she wanted to hear, somebody yelled out, play James Taylor, I'll give you $1. It's just like the old Holiday Inn gigs.
That's good.
But I left that night, I'm driving home and I've got a check for $2,500 in one pocket and I've got $500 in cash and merchandise sales. And I'm driving and I'm like, I got 4,000 people on my mailing list. They all have birthdays. That's $10 million. It's like, holy shit. Right. So I had to refine the idea, but I sent an email out the next day. I said, look, friends, book me into your home. We'll cut out the middleman. I'll just come to your house. I'll play for an hour. I'll hang out for an hour. I'll teach your kid a couple of guitar chords, invite your friends, that kind of thing. And within 24 hours, I booked 52 shows. It was crazy. The want of people to have music in their home. And this is 2008. And so I did this. And then the next year, I figured that I didn't need to carry a PA system because I'm just in people's homes. So I could fly anywhere and do these shows. And so I figured out how to do 2 or 3 of these a day, every day. And then that year I booked 120 shows in just the summertime months, playing, 5 on the weekend, going from show to show to show. And so the Lawn Chairs and Living Rooms tour, 14 years I did that. And that was where, that was my $1 million idea. I mean, that really was the idea that put me over the top. And now I can afford to put out more Verve Pipe records independently and do things in a more practical, business way.
Wow, that is so cool that, because I think in business, we have to reinvent ourselves all the time. I mean, take right now with what's going on in the pandemic, so many business people I coach have had to, rethink what they do and do different stuff, including me and everyone else that, that I work with. So I think that is amazing. Brian, I have some questions for you here from our audience. Sure. First question is from Elena. Elena, thanks for tuning in, and she wanted to know, how do you keep motivated with some of these big setbacks?
Elena, that's a great question, because I'll tell you what, I think out of all the people and all the businesses right now, musicians are getting screwed. I mean, as usual, because look, if you look at streaming, streaming, and I don't tell people don't stream, because I stream. Listen, we don't want clutter in the house. We got young kids around. But for 4 million plays of the Freshmen, I got a check for $200.
Wow.
Streaming does not pay. It does not pay the musicians. I wonder where that money is, where that money is going. Are we talking like
Apple Music, Brian?
Apple Music is precisely where I got the check for $200. Wow. So that's terrible.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to find ways to reinvent yourself to try to make money. And the way that I keep motivated is to surround myself with people that I love, my band, and for us to get creative and stay creative. And during this time, especially, not concentrate on the downsides, because like I said, musicians are really getting the screw now. On top of streaming not being, clubs are closing down. There's nowhere to play. Right now, we're concentrating on creating content. And that's the most important thing. And that's the thing that motivates me the most. Songwriting, writing movies, doing short films and that kind of thing, all that kind of stuff. And also I have a Patreon page that I try to be creative with those people and think of what they would like to see from me as well. That's the kind of thing that keeps me motivated. If I get out there and I just woe is me and I got to get a day job and the whole thing, a day job is no option for me. It's just no option. I have zero interest in doing anything but being creative. So concentrating on the good things that are happening and trying to make things happen and thinking outside of the box always is how I keep myself motivated, for sure. That's a great question, though. Thank you, Ellen.
I love that. And, that speaks to our business people. So, guys, think about this. I mean, you're an entrepreneur. You're a business person. You're going to have to reinvent yourself so many times. And you got to figure out a way to stay motivated. So, what a great story there. Another question for you, Brian, here as we talk through your journey is, did you ever have a creepy experience playing in someone's home?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I've had quite a few. Because Danny, listen, you got to go. You do everything through email. You don't really know these people. I mean, after years of doing it, there's a lot of repeat customers. So I know when some doors you go up to and you know what's behind the door. You know the people, you know their family and friends, which also is a great way to make connections. You know their kids, and we made kids albums and everything,
Yeah.
Capitalized on that. But most times, you knock on a door, you don't know what you're walking into. Like my manager was super concerned that someone would say there was going to be 50 people at a party, and I would show up and it would just be one lonely woman in a wedding dress or something. They're like, oh my God. That never happened, but I've been in plenty of situations. Actually, even the creepy ones end up being good. Yeah. Like I showed up at one guy's place. He was a millionaire, great guy from Texas. He's still one of my better friends now. I met him through this. He said, come on, we're going to go out and play on the speedboat. And I'm like, what? I'm going to play music on a speedboat? And there's like four of us on this speedboat, and I got a guitar, and we go out there, and he cracks open some beers, and we've got a bottle of bourbon, and we sit, we watch the sunset on the speedboat, and I play music for him. It was amazing.
Wow.
And I was like, would you ever show up to somebody's house you don't know and get right on their speedboat right away with a bunch of drums? So yeah, it can be creepy. I don't know, but it's always worked out great. They're always, when I look back on, I've done over 800 house concerts now, right? I look back on all of them and I go, you know what? They always end up okay. 800 of those, even the ones that are really odd, those are the ones that stick out in my memory.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And when you first show up, you go, oh, this might be weird. Those are the ones that I remember, and I remember they're being great,
That's awesome. Are you still doing that, Brian?
No, I retired the Lawn Chairs Living Rooms tour because of the guerrilla. It was a guerrilla style. For instance, it's like when guerrilla filmmaking, you just jump out of the van, you play real quick, and then jump back, or you film real quick, so you don't need a license or anything or permits. So this was kind of a guerrilla style way of doing private shows where, somebody from St. Louis would say, hey, I want you to come down and play a show in St. Louis. And we'd say, okay, well, that's going to cost you $3,000 or $4,000. But hold on, we'll send an email out to our people in St. Louis and say, hey, Brian's coming down there. If you want him to come and play a show, he's available at this time. And then everybody's price comes down. So gradually you get 5 people to get on there. Everybody only pays $1,000 or whatever. And I have to play more shows, but you make so many more people happy. And then you're in front of so many more people. That's 50 people or 100 people per show. Suddenly I'm in front of 500 people instead of 50 people making the same amount of money. That's always worth it to me.
Yeah.
So,
that's
I
awesome.
stopped the guerrilla style only because the Verve Pipe has been playing more and more and more. And I honestly, just getting older, it's just too hard to do,
Well, if you ever want to jumpstart that and you're in LA, I'd love to take you up on that.
Hey man, I could just come over for fun and play for you. I do
Perfect.
that too. I just show up. As long as I only play a few songs, and as long as there's some bourbon.
we can definitely arrange that for sure.
All right,
Family
that sounds
concert
good.
at the house.
I'm in.
Kids would love it. Brian, you did mention kids albums, and I wanted to ask you about that because I did read that at one point. I think it said 2009. You pivoted to doing kids albums, which is kind of another reinvention that I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah. Well, first of all, whenever I went, we have young kids, right? But my daughter at that time was 3, my first daughter. And I noticed that any time that you go to take a kid to a kid's show, we only had one child then, but I saw parents who had like 4 or 5 kids go to these, like the children's ballet performances or all this stuff. If you buy one T-shirt for one of your kids, you're going to buy T-shirts for all of your kids. And I got that idea of going, well, if we put out a kids album, then we're not just going to sell one T-shirt to an adult. We're going to sell 4 T-shirts to all the kids. And we quadrupled our sales. And then, Sirius XM picked up that kids record. And, this isn't the Wiggles, by the way. This is like like heavier rock, not super hard rock, but it's like 4-part harmony and rock and roll, but with kid lyrics, super fun stuff. And so when Sirius XM Kids Place Live picked it up, we ended up having a huge hit out of that first kids record and played Lollapalooza, but on the kids stage with 10,000 screaming kids,
Cool.
And we played Austin City Limits, the kids stage and that kind of thing. And it was a blast. I mean, honestly, we sold more merchandise of that stuff than we did the adult stuff. Even to this day, we sell more merchandise of the kids stuff for sure. Yeah. Wow. So it was and then we made another kids record, and then we decided again, we're just getting older and I got tired of playing for kids because it's so exhausting. You have to play an hour of, you could play a 2-hour Verve Pipe show, a regular show, adult show, and you've got ballads in there and people take solos and it's more relaxed pace. Sure. A kid's show, you got to be boom, 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 on the whole time for an hour, because if the kids get bored, the parents get mad and you get a bad reputation of not being entertaining enough to be a kids band. So those are exhausting. And we would do a kid show during the day, and then that night we would play in a club. So you're playing 2 shows a day. Man, it was super exhausting. So we stopped playing the kid shows too.
Yeah, I bet. Also, the kids aren't drinking during the show, so it's a different dynamic.
Yeah, it's exactly. Well, some smoke, but that's a whole. Not mostly vape. I don't want to give kids a bad rep. They mostly just vape.
Yeah,
anyway, it's a joke.
And then Brian, I wanted to ask you about, how the business of music has changed, because you've been in the industry for, 30 years now. And before, like you said in the beginning of our chat, it was albums and things like that. And now, that kind of doesn't happen. And so I was curious, how that has evolved, and how a rock and roll band now makes money, versus back in the day.
The biggest difference now is that songs, because music is essentially free with streaming, free as far as what the artist gets paid.
Right.
Because it's free, you have to consider songs as being advertisements. You are now producing a 4-minute, 3.5-minute song, which is a 3.5-minute advertisement for your band. That's essentially it. People pass it around. It's like if you got a good jingle, you got a good sound to it, word of mouth is going to help you, and that's how you're going to end up making any money. And you're going to make money by having people come to your live shows. Now, it's tough to say that during COVID, because again,
Right.
Now we have to, where we had one show in Chicago, we have to play 4 shows in Chicago now to make up for that one, because it's 25% capacity. And so we play 2 shows a night to make up for it. There's no profit. There's no profit there. I mean, there's so much overhead.
Sure.
So now I'm in the process of trying to figure out what's new for us. And that's most likely going to be a hybrid of streaming and streaming shows and actual, streaming the concerts that we're performing. So that's the biggest change, is that you have to rethink what your music is. Your music is advertisements. Each one of those things is an advertisement. Make them as perfect as possible, as great as they can, no matter what the genre. It doesn't have to be a hit song that you'd hear on the radio. Not that radio matters anymore, but they have to be catchy enough. They have to be emotional enough that they resonate with people. And when they resonate with people, when you hear a great song, you tell your buddies, "Oh my God, have you heard this new song by so-and-so?" That's what works for you. And back then, you didn't have to have that. Back before file sharing was something, before Napster happened, it was all spoon-fed from the big labels, and MTV was playing videos and that kind of thing. So that's the biggest change in the music industry for sure.
I remember those days when MTV actually played music. That was fun.
Remember that shit?
Yeah.
Man, whatever happened?
That's when I was a kid, for sure. So it's very interesting to me that like you said, the story is of reinvention, because you're constantly thinking of new ways to expand your business and do different things. Now, I know you also do some stuff on Patreon. I wanted to ask about that, and then also obviously give you the opportunity to plug that. By the way, guys, we will have all the links to Brian's stuff in the description below, so check that out.
Yeah, man. I mean, Patreon just blew me away when I first heard about it, when COVID first happened in March for us, and the governor shut everything down in Michigan. Our kids were home. We're like, what is going on? What's happening,
Right.
And when your mind finally catches up, you go, holy shit, we just lost, a 3-week East Coast tour, and on top of that, I mean, the total was like 30 gigs we lost last year. You have to go, well, what am I going to do? I mean, I need this for a living. And that's when somebody said, you should check out Patreon. It's not fun. It's not crowdfunding, which I was never a big fan of all the crowdfunding pages. But I feel like with Patreon, you can offer somebody something immediately, which is a great thing. So patreon.com, I checked out Ben Folds first, and I was like, oh, Ben Folds has got a lot of great content on there. I mean, really cool demos and stuff and lessons and that kind of thing. I said, well, I can do that. So I started my Patreon page, and I offer, from the $3 level all the way up to the $50 level. And then essentially these people have 24-hour access to me for, a private guitar lesson or anything they want. All of our streaming shows go on there first, and sometimes exclusively if you're a patron. So they'll get a lot of exclusive content. And for me, it actually, like, it's almost the exact amount of what my mortgage is every month. So it's amazing. It's been very, very helpful. And it's not crowdfunding where you commit to, with the crowdfunding pages with bands, they typically say, well, if you give us this amount, then we're going to give you 10 signed albums, and we're going to come to your house and play a show, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. There's none of that attachment. Really, I feel like the crowd is getting something back immediately because, hey, we're streaming a show tonight. You're invited, but my Facebook friends aren't. You know what I mean? This is what you get for putting in $3 a month, and plus you're helping me out. So, it really, so every once in a while, Danny, you got to put your hand out and say, you know what, guys, I need a little help here. And that's essentially what I did with the Patreon page. I said, look, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this. And I don't think I've ever denied anybody anything on Patreon. They ask me for something, I call them up for their birthday and, tell them happy birthday or whatever, because how hard is that? It's not that hard. You know what I mean?
Man, that is super cool. I hadn't heard of Patreon before this. And so I looked into it right before our show, and it's cool. Like, it's a very cool system. And so I may have to hit you up for that, because one thing I still, even though I went in a totally different direction, I have still always wanted to learn how to play guitar. So maybe I'll hit you up for a lesson.
Oh man, so I could show you. I'll give you a 5-minute lesson, and you'll be playing. Oh my God, you'll be playing Danny Boy for yourself. I want to dedicate this to myself. This is called Danny Boy.
No, my kids would love it, and actually, my 6-year-old wants to learn how to play too. So we got to get him started. Is that too early?
Too early? Oh my God, no. No. You can start much earlier. You know what I recommend? I'll recommend to you, Danny. I don't know your kid. Boy or girl?
Boy.
What I always recommend to parents is start them out if you can get a keyboard. Because do that first, because when you play a note on a keyboard, it's a pure note. When you teach them a little bit of music on a keyboard, when you pick up the guitar, it hurts their fingers. It's buzzy when they're that young, and that it doesn't sound good, and they want to quit. But if you get them a little keyboard and you show them how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb or something else simple, then all of a sudden they're playing music and they'll stay motivated. So I always recommend that first.
That makes sense. We actually have a keyboard. My mom gave it to us because she wants everyone to play piano, because that's her thing. And so she wants to teach everyone how to play piano too. My daughter's not too into it, but I think my son will be.
It's funny on the road when I go do these business meetings and I talk to these bankers, these guys at UBS and these huge bankers or whatever. Inevitably, it'll turn to music afterwards in the meet and greet, and they'll say, yeah, we got a garage band. We all get together, me and my buddies. I get that a lot. And then I'll always get some guy that'll say, yeah, I only have about 5 minutes a day to practice anything. But if I try to take piano now and practice 5 minutes a day, I'm going to be 70 or 80 by the time I can play. And I always have to go, dude, you're going to be 70 or 80 anyway. Right. Why not be 70 or 80 and know how to play the piano? I mean, what's stopping you,
Totally. I think that's a great point for sure.
And I think you can use that toward anything too, by the way.
Yeah, definitely. By the way, Brian, I should have asked you, what do you think of kind of music today, and where the industry is, and also just where music is creatively? I'm always interested, because I love the music from before a lot better than today, but wanted to get your opinion on that.
As a creator, I don't think much of the industry at all. It just doesn't have anything to do with me. You have to be industrious yourself, first and foremost. You have to get your music out there. From a listener, I don't pay much attention to what's going on other than what my friends suggest. I've got a lot of musician friends, and I know that my musician friends are going to go, hey, you're going to like this or you're not going to like this. Check this out. Check this out. I've been really into this band Elbow for the last 5 years. One of my favorite bands. I highly recommend them. The guy's got a bit of a Peter Gabriel voice, but they're terrific songwriters. They've been around since I think as long as we have too. And I just discovered them 5 years ago. And that's the only band I'll make a destination concert for sure,
Nice. I just wrote that down. I haven't heard of them, so I will check that out.
Check them out. They're terrific.
See, I have to hear like hip hop and rap from my 12-year-old son all day, which now I feel like I sound like my dad, because I'm like, your music sucks. My music was good.
Yeah. It all happens, man. It's all cyclical. It all comes around again. My oldest daughter loves loves the Beatles, and my youngest daughter doesn't like the Beatles. You're just, shunning the generation before you, you know what I mean?
Exactly. We did have someone who's watching the show, since we're talking about other music, say, what do you think of WAP by Cardi B? I had to put that on the screen.
I got to tell you, I know who Cardi B is. I have no idea what WAP is. Isn't that a derogatory term?
It is. It's a terrible song.
Okay, good enough. I'll take your word for it. You just don't make me listen to it, Danny. All right?
No, I won't. I can't. It's funny. I was gonna put some of your songs on, but then I realized, because we're on YouTube, they'll take it down for copyright, right? So
that's usually the issue. Yeah, with the Verve Pipe stuff, especially. I own all the Brian Vander Ark solo songs, but that's a whole different thing. So yeah,
right.
Sometimes you can get away with it if you You know, here's a good thing to do. If you find, we put out a live album of Villains, you know, and so
Yes.
there's acoustic versions that's called Live and Acoustic Villains album. You can play any of that stuff and you won't be nabbed for it because the algorithm won't pick it up, you know. But
Ah,
anyway,
okay. All right, cool.
that's typically, I mean, don't take my, I mean, just try it. But,
So I
you
should
know,
have
and if you do that, they'll just say, you'll just get a cease and desist. You know, you're not going to have to pay money all of a sudden. Just take it down then.
yeah, no, well what they'll do on YouTube is they won't allow you to monetize that video, which is not a big deal, you
I
know.
see. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you don't want to do that then. Don't do that.
Yeah, but I was going to play it for the just for the show today. For
Here's
you
another secret you can do too. You can put music in Audacity or something like that, and if you speed it up a little bit or slow it down a little bit or
That's
change it in
right.
some way, boom,
There
they
you
don't pick
go.
up on it.
We have a you know, musician telling us how to circumvent the copyright laws. I love it.
Yeah, I have to do it all the time.
That's right.
I get flagged for putting my own music up.
Oh, you do? That's crazy.
Oh my gosh, if you look at my Instagram, I think there are probably 3 or 4 throughout there where I actually write them and say, I wrote the song asshole or
Right.
something like that in the comment part of it, you know. I'll do that, you know, and then I'll send it to them. And then, you know, by the end of the day, sure enough, they'll, you know, somebody will figure it out and let me put my own songs up. But it's ridiculous. I get flagged all the time too.
That's so funny. So Brian, what's, you know, now we've caught up. We're all the way through to today. I'm curious for you, kind of, you know, what's next for you, and being in the industry for so long, kind of what keeps you going, and what are some of your big goals here for the future for you and the band and everything you're doing?
I love a challenge, and most entrepreneurs will tell you they love a challenge, and I love a challenge. And right now is the most challenging time to put out streaming concerts that are interesting, not just putting up one camera and having your band play a show. We just did a 5-camera shoot in a small club with no audience and just us sitting in a circle playing and telling stories to each other instead of acknowledging the crowd, and then the camera comes in and out. And we did that, and my God, man, people flipped for it, and I loved it too. So we're trying to find creative ways to stream concerts. Like, how would you want to see your favorite band? I figured that people would want to see you working together, workshopping a new song. We did that too, you know,
Yeah.
brand new song I threw on these guys. So there's things that we're trying to do to keep us relevant and interested with our own fans and with ourselves, frankly, to keep our confidence up and boost our confidence. But right now we're working on content. Right now we've got a new album that we're working on. It's almost done, doing those streaming shows and figuring out what the best way to do and the most interesting, creative way to do those streaming shows is. And that's a challenge. And like I said, I'm an entrepreneur and I love a good challenge. And so far it's been working out all right.
Oh man, that is awesome. Such good stuff. And I totally agree with you. As entrepreneurs, we definitely love a good challenge for sure. So that kind of show that you just said, that would go to your Patreon site first. Is that what would happen?
Yeah, in fact, if you become a patron, you can actually see that concert. I just posted something on my Instagram, a clip from it, and you can get an idea of what it is. It's Instagram.com/Brian Vander Ark. If you look at that, the last thing I posted, I think, was yesterday. It's like a 1-minute clip of a song we did, but that's the kind of vibe it is. So you'll get the gist of it. And if people want to go to the Patreon page for $3, they can actually see the whole concert. So
perfect. And you guys, we will have all those links down in the description for the video. So check that out. I know I will definitely check that out. But I'm going to the higher guitar lesson level, not the $3 level. All right, Brian.
That's
so you know.
nice. Yeah, do that. And I always tell people too. I tell people when we stream something, if they sign up for Patreon, I don't judge people if they sign up for $3 and they watch something and then they unsign, you know, and then they cancel their subscription. There's never a judging. That's what people do. I get it. So you get your guitar lesson for $10 and then go ahead and cancel it all. I'll be fine with it. But I guarantee you're going to love that lesson. At least you're going to get your $10 worth.
I am sure that I will. First, you got to recommend what guitar I have to get. So I'm gonna have to buy one first, and then we'll go from there.
Dude, any guitar that doesn't buzz on you. You know, I'm a big fan of Gibson. If you get yourself a Gibson guitar or even a Yamaha, my first guitar was a Yamaha guitar, cost me $200, and it was a great little guitar.
Perfect. So. Perfect. There we go. By the way, I should have mentioned earlier when you talked about it, your live acoustic music is like my favorite, and so I love that album you did. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Oh, the live acoustic Villains?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun, man. I also did an album called Planet Sundays Sessions, which I do a lot of cover songs, but on acoustic guitar. I do Detroit Rock City by Kiss, finger picking it, and I
Oh,
do
cool.
Smells Like Teen Spirit, finger picking it. So they're like slower versions of these great iconic songs. So
Wow. Oh,
people
that's
can check that
awesome.
out too.
I will
Yeah, man.
definitely check that out. Well, Brian, I will tell you, this has been so amazing. I think this ties into our audience of business people and how you can reinvent yourself and how you can, always be looking for the next challenge and how you can take that on. I mean, this is just amazing stuff. So congrats on,
Thanks,
all your
Dan.
success and everything you've done. Before I let you go, we have on my show a lightning round of questions that we do. So if you'll indulge
Oh,
me,
shit.
we're gonna have some fun.
Okay.
They're good. You'll do
All
great.
right.
So
Bring it.
the thing is, I want to tell you guys that are watching right now. We have a bunch of new people that just joined us. Maybe they're waking up on the West Coast here. That I didn't give you the questions beforehand, right?
I had no idea you were going to throw this on me, dude.
There we go. No, it's fun. These are good questions. It's
All
quick.
right.
It's like where I got the inspirations from inside the actor's studio. Did you ever watch that show
Oh,
with
of course. Dave Lipton.
James
Lipton. Yeah.
Lipton?
Yeah, of
Yes.
course. All right. Bring it.
So I
Let's
always
do
wanted
it.
to do something like that. All right, so you can tell us the first thing that comes to mind. Don't have to explain it if you don't want to. Here we go. Brian, what is your superpower?
Laughter.
I like that.
No. I
All
love to laugh. I think that I have an infectious laugh.
It's the best medicine, as they say.
It
For sure.
is.
We probably know the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway. When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
A veterinarian,
Oh,
believe it or not.
see,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
There we go. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I would love to be a German linguist.
Really, that's interesting. I won't ask you to
True.
explain.
You don't have to.
I'm
Please
not going
don't.
to ask you to
I can't
explain.
explain it. I don't know why I like it so much.
What's your favorite curse word or phrase?
Fucking A.
I like it. Couple more. What are you not very good at?
I'm a terrible drawer. I can't draw, and it's really frustrating because my wife, my kids are all great artists. I cannot doodle or draw to save my life. I'm the worst. It's laughably
interesting.
bad.
And as like a creative, you think you're creative, you would think you're creative all over the
Yeah,
board, but
I thought so, but apparently my drawing is shit. That's what my kids say.
how old are your kids now, by the way?
15, 10, and 5.
Okay, so you have three also.
Yep.
We have
Two girls and a boy.
we have very similar ages. I'm 12, 10, and 6.
Boys?
Boy,
boys
girl,
are-
boy. So I have two boys and a
Oh,
girl.
good for you. Good for you.
The opposite. So we should have actually talked about it before, but in Michigan, are they in school now? Or are they still doing the homeschool?
Yeah, we decided the kids wanted to do homeschool instead because, after March last year when everything went online, we just said, let's continue to do this because they're flourishing. They love it. They love not having to go into a school. They like not having to deal with the social aspects of it, and they're doing great. So we'll let them be home all they want. We love them being home.
I love it. We our kids are they're in school, but it's home, Zoom stuff, and we should have done
Sure,
that.
same with us. Yeah.
Yeah, we should have just stayed there. So good stuff. Okay, I have a couple more lightning round questions here. Actually, two more. Here's a good one for you. If you could get rid of any one state, which would it be?
Florida.
Not a Florida fan.
It's just it's so easy to me. So easy to me. The time I've spent. I have friends in Florida too. Listen, nothing against Florida, but it's just like it's a lightning round. The first thing you ask, and all I can ever think of is that Bugs Bunny cartoon where Bugs sawed off Florida and let Florida, sail away.
Right.
So I'm like, everything I hate right now is Florida. Anyway.
That's funny. I just added that question to the lightning round. I like that answer. I'm going to keep that in.
That's
okay,
a good
last question.
question.
This one's my favorite of the lightning round is, what car best embodies your personality?
Chevy Malibu.
Oh, cool car.
1980 Chevy Malibu, green, mint green. I had one, and it's everything I've ever wanted. I mean, I just love that car. I loved it, and I would love another one today. And I think that pretty much speaks to my personality, too.
Perfect. That's a good one. Well, that is it for the lightning round. I'm going to give you a big round of applause for that. Thank you very much.
Oh, nice. I didn't realize that there was an audience in your studio.
Yes, there is a huge audience.
Sounded like a lot of kids, actually. Now I feel bad for the language.
We could do the DJ air horn. Also, we got lots of noises.
Nice,
That's Ecamm for you, by the way.
nice.
All kinds of sounds. So, Brian, before I let you
I love.
go, I wanted to know if you could give our budding entrepreneurs, real estate agents, business people, and maybe even some musicians that are watching today some final words of wisdom from Brian Vander Ark.
Man, stay motivated. Stay motivated. Number one, stay motivated. Whatever you wanted to do and whatever you were meant to do, you were motivated in the beginning. You got to find a way. If you're meant to do something, you'll find a way, and continue to stay motivated.
I
That's it.
love that. What a great final words here, Brian. I will tell you, this has been such a pleasure, and thank you for sharing your story. And congrats on all your success through all of the challenges that you've had and how you've had to reinvent yourself so many times. A lot of us have had to do that, me included, and so it's just an awesome, very inspirational story. And thank you so much. I know I'll be checking out the Patreon page. I want to recommend everyone that's watching does the same. So thank you again. And you guys, if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, the whole goal of that channel is to help you with business, real estate, finance. And so we want to share all of these things with you to help you make great decisions in those areas. If you're a real estate agent, you want to check out some of our programs, you can do that as well. If you're looking to buy or sell real estate anywhere in the U.S., we have either a team or a referral partner there, and so that's kind of what we specialize in. And Brian, thanks again. Oh, we have one last comment here for you. Devin, who's watching, says, Brian, you are awesome. So we'll end on that.
Thanks, Devin. I love that. That's a good way to appreciate it, man.
We'll